Okay, and we're back. So I've gone ahead and cut out the stuff I wanted to cut out. I took the headrests out because, again, they're not really going to be seen, and a few other pieces around the frame here. Some stuff in the back, mostly the stuff that was above this point here, because when it's flipped over, this is really the only thing that's going to be seen for the most part. Here's a good example where you can see a one-sided mesh. Here's the floor pan, and you can see that that's see-through from this side, but obviously has stuff on this side. Anyway, so the tally on this now is, if you look at our original 165,000 triangles, this one's 105. So we've gotten quite a bit of savings out of that by eliminating not too much stuff and stuff that was not going to be largely seen anyway, and a few other things that I don't feel I needed. So now we're going to work the same thing on the frame, the outer, the skin, the main thing. So this one's where it gets a little tricky as well. There's things I want to remove and other things that are kind of tricky how they did them on these models that you might want to consider when you're doing things. So one thing to consider right off the bat is anything having to do with graphics. This stuff will not hold when you reduce it to one material, when you do the merge materials. So you may as well get rid of it. And there's a way to get rid of this in this particular case, the way they modeled this, because they made the bracket and they made the license plate and they made the nuts. So you can actually remove just the license plate but leave the bracket, so there's an obvious license plate bracket still there. I'm going to take the badging off because this badging, it comes out but not real well. It'll get kind of blurry. And then when you further reduce the mesh using the reduction method, it'll just become, a scar or some other indefinable thing. So again, I'm getting rid of any of that kind of stuff. And there'll be a few other things. This one is a good one to do as an example quickly because it doesn't have as much as the regular cars like the sports car or the bigger vehicles. There's not nearly as many things to cut out, so it doesn't take nearly as much time. I'm able to I only spent a few minutes after I stopped recording on the other one, so it really this one doesn't take that long, so it picked a pretty good one to do an example of. Anyway, we're going to continue on here. And so we'll see what's selectable here. That badge should go. And it might get tricky to see. Oh, they did it this way, okay. So sometimes you'll see their little individual parts too. This I definitely want to get rid of. Because, again, the idea here is that with some of this kind of really small, fine stuff, it just creates more stuff that it has to try to resolve when you either reduce things or when you try to render it, for that matter. And we're trying to get things to a bit more of an efficient place. So that'll get rid of the license plate. Now, the graphics go away because they're attached to that surface. They're not attached to this surface. So when we do this, you'll see the graphics should not display on this surface. So even though the material is still part of the model and the mesh, and will show up in the material slots when we get to that point, it won't display, obviously, and you just can ignore it or put something else in its place. I usually just put a blank kind of material. We'll get to that for efficiency, where anything that has been cut out and doesn't show, we just make it all the same material. And again, that's so that when it tries to resolve all the materials, it's not trying to create slots, or not slots, but sections in the UV, the material, for stuff that isn't going to be displayed anyway and is invisible to begin with. We'll get into some of that in a little bit. Let's see. Now, another one we can do, here's another good example of some costly stuff. Let me get a little bit closer here. So I don't need, these are the bulbs, and they modeled the bulbs. This inner piece, sometimes you could take this out. Maybe. We'll have to see about that. But these are kind of costly because, there's a lot of facets to that. So you want to kind of make a judgment. So again, we're going to go with a little bit, oops, that did not work. Cancel that. Something came off on that. It did not come out the way I wanted it. It didn't undo the one. Okay, let's try that again. It switched the setting. Again, this does it sometimes. It just changes them for whatever reason. Maybe there's a key thing for it. Doesn't really tell you that, though. So again, we start with the stuff that we know we want to get rid of, or I want to get rid of. So I'm going to get rid of these bulbs. Again, they're multifaceted, so they do cost a bit. We'll see what this looks like. The lights are going to tend to look kind of chromy, so you may not need this inner part and things like any screws and things like that. And you'll see sometimes Unreal does this and goes dark. I don't know why when you're zooming around and getting inside of things like this. Okay, and then all of this. Now see, we're going to be looking at from the underside. This is our view, plus whatever the frame is that we're going to put in place. Pretty much this pipe might be seen. I suppose that might not be a bad one to keep. This thing does not need to be there. And all of this other stuff is not going to be seen. You can see this one actually has, let's see, does that actually have an underside of the trunk? So this has actually modeled a side for the underside of the hood. So when you're looking at it from underneath, you'll be able to see through. So there'll be something there. It won't just see through to sky or to ground, I guess the case may be. But all that other stuff, you're not going to see that. So I'm going to take that out. I'll probably do that off camera or speed it up a little bit because there's other stuff I want to show more right now. We are going to look at also possibly, again, window trim type stuff. I don't think there's a whole lot here though. Not really. This one doesn't really have much in that regard. And on the bus, if you ever do this with the bus has little rectangular turning signals or reflectors or whatever, and there's like 6 little squares inside of it and all this other stuff. And it's all over the bus. There's tons of it all over the bus. Might not need this insert either. We'll see that. Again, this is kind of where you do, we're doing the one level. I know I don't want those little buttons or little whatever lights. So I'm taking those out. And then on another pass, I'll take this out and see what it looks like. And see if that's something that I want to keep or not. I am taking out the wiper blades though, because these are a little bit, I wouldn't say they're super costly, but they definitely are a rendering thing that I don't need. And the wiper blade. Okay. And we're going to take out a couple more items from here. So again, this one's fairly straightforward. There's not a whole lot. But sometimes what you'll see, you'll end up seeing like there'll be a back seat, or well, the back seat's already there, but there'll be like an interior part here. This one has a cargo area. But sometimes there'll be another thing, and there'll be stuff underneath here in between like an upper deck part and the lower part, and there's stuff inside, and you're never going to see that. You know, in fact, you literally can't see that if you're anywhere within, you know, again, unless you destroy the model. So it's the kind of thing you can get rid of a lot of stuff like that if you don't absolutely need it. That's the exhaust. Yeah, see, here we go. See, like here, these bolts are never going to be seen. You can't open the hatchback, and even if you could, you might not see those anyway. So there's stuff underneath here that just I'm never going to, and especially for what I'm doing here, are just never going to be seen. So as long as they don't, the trick is, okay, here's the real trick. Sometimes those screws are easy. These nuts and bolts are fairly easy to say, yeah, we don't need that. But you got to be a little careful because sometimes they will make something in here that can't be seen and is a piece like this, but it's connected and extends and ends up showing on the outside or in some other way that you would definitely be able to see it if it was missing, or it creates a situation that blocks something, then now you could see straight through it. So you got to kind of be judicious and experimental. I think that one we can get rid of. I think that we can get rid of. And then there's going to be, well, actually, I don't know what that is. Let me just make sure I didn't do the nuts there. So, and then after every stage, it's a good idea, depending on which thing you're working on, the interior or the exterior, to kind of go around it from in that side that you were working on and make sure nothing got cut out that is necessary. Again, I missed a few things like that before and a couple times, and now I have gaps that I don't really want. But it does happen, and you got to be careful about that. So I'm going to save that. Do a quick check on. I didn't cut that much out, but 235 versus 220. So we already gained a little bit there. This one may not have as big a gains. These the smaller vehicles don't seem to have as much gain as the bigger vehicles. The bigger vehicles have a ton of stuff on there that you can cut out, and many more mechanicals. So, and this one in particular is a much simpler vehicle too. I think I'm going to actually get rid of this too, because that is not going to something like that. I feel won't be as noticeable if it's missing. You know. I mean, if it's there and you see it, you go, oh, they put that on there. But if it's missing, you're not necessarily, especially in a game, going to go, hey, where's the latch for the hatchback, you know, or for the trunk? It's not necessarily going to. Now, this is another question, the door handles. These are pretty small. This kind of oval cavity is probably more important. Now we're getting down to things like what is really going to be seen in the middle of an action game or whatever. You know, and for my purposes, again, I'm a distance away. I'm never more than, I don't think I'm ever more than closer than about 10, 20 feet. So we're not really going to see a ton of stuff in the smaller details like that for my purposes. But you have to then, you could then say, you could make a case to say, well, I don't think I need the door handle, but I want this oval because that's a bigger landmark, a bigger piece that can be seen. Whereas the door handle just looks like a reflection. And yeah, from certain angles you can tell it's a door handle, but it's, and you know it's a door handle because you know what a door handle looks like. But from what will actually be seen and what will actually kind of contour or show you the contours of the, you know, of the vehicle or the piece, it's probably not really necessary. So for this particular one, I think we're going to remove the door handle if I can, if it's separable, but it looks like it is. Yeah, there's two pieces there. So we're going to take that out, and I'll have to do that to the other, the front doors as well. Because again, I don't think you're going to notice it at all that much. What you are going to notice, though, is weird, is what is going on with these things. I guess this is supposed to be on the glass. That's another thing, too, is there's no glass. And there are, I think there's somewhere in there there's a model for, that has glass that you can do. But I'm running without the glass because glass is, again, kind of expensive. And in the middle of a game isn't going to be as noticeable. That I'm not sure. Okay, so this is a question here. Is this piece here does this piece here run all the way across and this piece is just laid over top? If it is, I don't need this piece because there's already a frame there. Yeah, so I think we'll take a look and see what that looks like, because that could make a dissimilar, you know, material there. Let's see what that looks like. If it's kind of all black, then it doesn't matter. I can keep it that way. But if it's see-through, if there's nothing on the other side or some other thing, we're going to put that back, I think. And it's a piece of black trim, but I don't think it's so narrow. I don't think I need it. And I think we're going to get rid of this black piece too, because again, I think it's meant to be there for the, let's see if that's I think that's meant to be there with the glass. And since we're not running glass, let's take a look and see what that would take out if I did it. Or is that the whole? No, that's inside. So there's a good example. Let's see what, oh yeah, see that runs, oh, that's a weather strip. So that's a weather strip that runs inside of here. And again, unless you open the back, you're not going to see that. You can see it from this side, but it doesn't matter because, you know, we're not really, we don't need that. That's a good example of where it actually went around, down, and inside of the hatch. But unless you open the hatch, you're not going to see that. In this case, I'm not doing that. And even then, it may not be needed anyway because, again, no one's looking for weather stripping on something like this. They're just looking for, you know, something that looks like a hatchback or a car or a door or whatever. So we get rid of the non-essentials. Oh, yeah. Oh, and for my purposes, again, I'm getting rid of the mirror as well. The mirror is not terribly expensive in terms of polys, but it is definitely something that will go wonky. Oops, that did not work right. Okay. See how I didn't get the circle? I'm in a position here where it's not registering the circle. Or did I not select the tries? Because now it's registering the floor. Did I pick the floor by accident? Maybe I did. Maybe I inadvertently, yeah, I did. I inadvertently did. That's a good example. Sometimes you go to pick the model and you hit some other model or the floor, and now you're editing the floor. We didn't want to edit the floor. There we go. So this is definitely going to have a few polys in it, and the problem with the mirror, and again, you really won't necessarily notice it's missing unless you really scrutinize the model. But the problem with the mirror is because of where it is, it's kind of suspended. Again, it's supposed to be sitting on the glass. And also, it will go strange when you reduce the model. So we're trying to go with larger pieces so that they render better than really tiny pieces that will end up just looking like little dots or slashes. Sometimes those pieces, when you do the reduction, will just look like a triangle. And then it stands out like a sore thumb because it's like a three-sided triangle, trapezoid, pointed kind of, looks like a dagger or something like that. And then it looks really odd when it's supposed to look like a trapezoid or something, or a mirror. And you get weird angular results that don't look good. Okay, so I think most of that is what we're going to do for this upper part. And you could make a case possibly that might be able to go. This is where you have to compare. You have to put everything together and see if this piece and the interior, because I think the interior would cover that up. Again, they modeled like the firewall, you know, but it's not necessary because that may not be necessary because you're not going to, you know, see that inside of it that way. You could do something like this as well, possibly, because if you look, what you've got here, here's the upper, the outside, and the dash should come in right above that, so that should be covered up. And we're going to check that. I'm going to escape that. We're going to accept that. So we're going to do a quick assembly here, just take a look at that and try to model, try to see about that. And I'll also show you another trick to keeping all this stuff together in a way that helps manage it when you get to the point of actually assembling everything. All right, so first thing we're going to do here is we're going to 0 this. The nice thing, now here's a nice thing. They actually did make all the pieces 0 origined. So when you take the pieces and you stick them in the world and you put them in 0, so when you do this, everything fits together nicely. Okay, so we're going to 0 this and then bring this back. And then we can do the doors nicely. You can just actually drag them in. And then you can just, with both of them highlighted, 0 them. Okay, so that's a quick rough assembly. I still got a little bit more editing to do on the underside of the engine. But the real trick here, the other trick here, we want to get these grouped together real quick. We highlight everything because there's one more thing we need to do that I definitely need to do. This is car 5. So what we want to do is we want to get this into a folder. And we're going to move to, we're going to create new folder, and we're going to do car 05. And that way they get grouped. Now when we do the tires, we put them in here as well. And then when we go to make the meshes, we can just highlight the whole thing, do actor, convert to static mesh, and that makes life a lot easier. Also, you can do tricks like this where you can turn a vehicle on or off, you know, kind of a thing, which is what I've done with some other vehicles to get them, or to work on them. Okay, so now we're going to do the door. I got to do one quick thing on the door. I want to take those door handles out. There we go. Make sure I got that right on the other side. Looks that way. Okay. Okay. Do the file save as. Okay. So now what we can do is we're going to and the other thing you can do then is you can go in here and you can start turning stuff off so that you get them out of your view, so you only have the one thing to work on and you don't have everything else sticking out there. Oh, well, let me flip this over actually. Let me do an inversion here. Get a look at the bottom of this thing. Now we're definitely going to take out, we're definitely taking out the firewall and this, because again, that's not going to be seen. And again, this might be a piece. Yeah, I'd say that can probably be taken out too, because that's underneath as well, in a way that is not going to be seen. Then you start seeing stuff, and you go, well, now what's this here? Yeah, that might... yeah, that might go. Again, they modeled frames and parts of frames and stuff like that too. That doesn't need to be there. Make sure there's nothing showing through from the outside. It's not going to be seen from the underside because it's underneath everything else. So I think that can go as well. Double check. Take a quick peek on the outside if we accept that. And we can see if that will be a thing or not. So I'm looking at this from an exhaust pipe here. I think I'm going to get rid of this exhaust pipe here because it is not... I think it's going to get lost with all the other stuff, but I think I might keep these other two pipes here. I'm not sure about that, but maybe, because those, you know, they look like exhaust pipes back here. They did this weirdly where they did some of the parts of the undercarriage and exhaust system on the interior body part and some of it on the exterior. It's like these two pipes and this pipe are on the exterior body part, and these, the mufflers are actually, and the differential are actually on the interior part, and some of the engine parts too under here. It's weird how they did that. I don't know. Usually they don't split it like that. Anyway, but we're going to do some stuff where we eventually, since I'm doing the damaged, for my purposes, the underside represents the damaged model. You're not going to see the underside on the clean model, the pre-damaged, the undamaged model. So we're going to look at this from the standpoint of what can we get rid of, and also what can we break. What we're going to eventually do is we're going to actually take a section of pipe, like here or here, and we're actually going to cut that out with the actual triangle, the actual mesh editor that doesn't do the whole object thing, to show a broken pipe. And we're going to do a few things like that around here. We'll bust this one up, and bust this pipe up, and bust this leaf spring up, and stuff like that, and some of these control arms and stuff to show, or whatever these are, to show more of a damage thing. Like I said, you could eliminate all of this stuff if you don't mind not doing the method we're going to do here, where you would have, we're trying to do it, we're get all of this stuff to one mesh, one material, and a material that's interchangeable. So in order to do that, all of this has to be set up, on the same model, good and damaged, whole and damaged. So my purpose is to work underneath here to damage stuff up, because it's only going to be seen when it's damaged and flipped over. But if you want to, you could do where you just eliminate all of this undercarriage stuff that wouldn't be seen. You might keep a little bit of the axle stub here, maybe these axles, so they show under the tire. But other than that, you could pretty much eliminate all of this stuff if you just want a clean, good-looking model that's just going to sit there in the world, Or even if you're going to animate it to drive. Not if it's going to flip over, of course, but you could do that if you don't mind. You'll have to do the later process we're going to show multiple times then, which is what I originally did. I originally did one version that was clean and one version that was damaged, and had different materials for each one. Actually, I had for each individual model, let alone the way I'm trying to do it here, where we combine everything into one so it can be interchangeable. Anyway, so we're going to look at, next is, I think that's pretty much it for, I'm going to do a little bit more editing here, and then we'll come back and we'll do we'll look at what the savings were, and then we'll see about how to put this all together.